Okay, now I did promise Elizabeth the first bash on the questions since we squeezed her out, and I'm also aware that we squeezed Sal out a little bit. So if I could just have a wee bit of formal structure at the beginning here, which is any questions on Elizabeth's talk around the whole gender in games and gender in general and the internet issues. If we can do that first, that would be great. Hands up, anybody who's got any questions on that one. If not, we can move on to the general questions. Nope, nothing on gender. Okay, let's move on then. Any other general questions for anybody on the panel? I can't see. Right, there's one. I think the first waver on the balcony there. That's great. Blue shirt on the balcony, great.
Hi. Could you hear me?
Yeah.
Paul Harrington from the International Baccalaureate. I've come to the inclusion session hoping to pick up some good ideas this morning. I work obviously for an international organization. I'm a grandfather with a daughter who's a single mother, and I thought, fab, great. The only problem is I live in Wales. I don't know if our Scottish friends feel the same, but there's a lot of English-centric stuff, calling UK stuff. Is that an issue that anybody would like to answer?
I don't know, am I on?
Yeah.
Because I've still got the mic. Is it on? Is that on? Yeah, that's fine. You'll be very pleased to know I was actually with the Welsh Assembly last week. You've got an awful lot going on in Wales, huge amounts. I'm not sure what, if you're involved at all in age-wise, school-wise, but if you've not met your regional support centre in Wales, that would be a good place to start. So lots of activity. Obviously there's issues around the Welsh medium as well, the focus on the language, and the fact that the video conferencing network in Wales, certainly across the state, the sort of the universities and the colleges, that sort of area, is a phenomenal expertise there that may be of use in your international role. I've no idea, but please don't think that we're all talking just on the English front. Certainly from our perspective, we would cover anywhere, because if we're going to talk about inclusion, we would be talking about those things. The things that I was mentioning are all available right across the piece. They're certainly not English at all. So you'll find our portable applications and things for you will just be the same. And I'm sure Helen would be saying exactly the same things. But do have a look at the new policies coming out of the Assembly government. There's some very exciting things on the digital front that actually the rest of the country needs to learn. And I'm really rather hoping East Yorkshire learns from Wales, because if you can crack the digital divide in Wales with connectivity, maybe I can get it at my house.
I won't comment on Scotland, but I actually live in Brighton, which is as far away from Scotland as you can get without being wet. And I certainly won't be watching the England-Ukraine match. It will be Scotland are playing Japan that day. Of no interest to anybody in the audience, no doubt. But can we go on to the next question? There was someone just in the front of the balcony that put their hand up. Can we? Yeah, over on the right-hand side of the sound console. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Mehdi. I'm a freelance software developer. My question is for the last speaker. You mentioned that 11% of mobile users are using the internet. And a main reason for that is probably the mobile phone operators themselves, O2, Orange, Vodafone, and so on, who are making data plans very difficult to understand and very expensive. So instead of just accepting that and saying that mobile isn't the answer, why can't the UK government talk to these guys and get them to make data plans easy to understand and more affordable, so that you can really leverage the mobile technology in the whole of the UK. I know that the European Union has already started doing that for roaming charges and have had some good results across the European Union. So why couldn't the UK government do that in the UK for mobile internet and data plan charges?
Okay, the point I was making wasn't that you can't do exciting informal learning activity on mobile phones and using mobile handsets, and that is happening. And so one of the most interesting projects I saw was where homeless people were using mobile phones to take films of their lives and then edit them and put them up as films and sharing them with one another. It's more that quite a lot of technology people say to me mobile is the answer because everybody in a deprived estate has got a mobile phone, therefore they just need to use it for the internet and they will be included. And actually I just don't think that is the answer. I use my mobile phone to do all sorts of wonderful things, but I also use my laptop and I also use I also use my Wii and I also use my PlayStation. You know, I think it's about, for people to be properly included, that I think they need to have a computer. You know, like I said, that example of the homeless guys taking films on their mobile phones of their lives, they then went back to a centre and they used a computer to edit that. It's not that the technology isn't there and it isn't ready. I just don't, I mean, who in this room thinks you will ever only use a mobile device for all of your, one person, two people, three people, four, okay. I mean, not very many, it's a minority, is that I just don't think that a mobile, if we're talking about getting people to have an equivalent experience of the internet and interactive technologies than the experience that I experience, I don't think just having a mobile phone is the answer.
Do you have any views, David, in the developing world with regard to, you know, the mobile being the key technology here as opposed to the PC?
I think too often it gets discussed as, you know, an exclusive or. It's either all this or none of this, or all the other. And then that just isn't going to be helpful, because obviously there's important things you can do on any type of device. But I think, you know, devices move really quickly. So as it was phrased, I'm thinking, you know, who uses a mobile device, or who would use a mobile device for everything? And then I'm thinking, well, what constitutes a mobile device? You know, so that some things are getting smaller, other things getting bigger. They're all more powerful. So you think, if I have a device, but I can't stand a small screen, but I sit at a table and it has a display in it, you know, and I plug it in and then it has my stuff and it connects. You know, so I don't know, is that still a mobile device? What is it? It's all good. I think, again, that, you know, it's obvious technology is just going to keep moving forward. And the main thing that's lacking is, like, just get more and more good things for people to do with it. And then you can translate from the device to device depending on what's available.
I know it's Neil, you're hovering around there. Come up on the panel here. No, we've got a chair for you. Next question. Again, there's two here. We'll tee them up. The one on the right-hand side, purple shirt, then over on the right-hand side against the wall here on the side. Thanks.
Hi there. My name is Steve Carrick-Davis. A question for actually Elizabeth. I really appreciated your presentation. I felt that what you were saying in terms of expanding our conceptions of what games can do was just wonderful. And my question to you is just the scenario you painted where that developer had gone deeper in Sims based on the book by Barbara Ehrenreich, I think her name was, called Nickeled and Dimed. Has there been any creative review around how that game has now influenced the book? For example, is the book now promoting try this online? Has it, in terms of expanding the concept of games, have we reached that reader's market? And the second question is, have you teamed up at Arizona State University with any non-profit organization to understand the impact of that game in terms of social impact and understanding of what those many women have done in terms of empathizing with the character in Nickeled and Dimed, in terms of their action in society and change? Because I think that's another way that we can help our schools understand the dynamic and the change of society, if we can team up with non-profit organizations or social enterprise who can use games to sort of replicate and expand that model of change.
Okay, so two questions. First, to restate the first one, the question I think was, has there been any study, or have I studied how playing this game influenced people's desire to read the book or book sales? Well, I do know simply from looking at the forums that many people who played the game did go and read the book. So I don't have, you know, large-scale data about the overall influence, but I think it is a good example of how you could use a game to get people excited and interested about going to a text, to a book. So again, I think, as speakers have talked about earlier, we the two are connected. I guess I think of Henry Jenkins' work on participatory culture that shows how people move among a variety of media. So it's not just that, say, kids play games. Jim G. talked about this yesterday. But they use the games as a stepping stone to, say, playing Age of Mythology, they go and then read books about mythology, or they create their own games around mythology, or they write stories using mythological characters. I think that's another thing that we can learn from in terms of how players actually interact with games. In terms of working at Arizona State around these issues, I am involved in a project now with another faculty member where we're actually designing an educational programs around things like games or Scratch or other forms of technology to engage low-income girls of color in learning about technology in ways that enable them to see how technology can be used for social justice ends. So for example, we have a course or a component that involves The Sims, and we're having them play the nickel and dime challenge, read parts of the book, and then think of ways that they can create their own challenges around social issues that are meaningful in their lives that other people can play as a form of educating others about their lives, as well as thinking through issues of social justice. So as I was telling someone after the session this morning, part of our goal with them is to enable them to be more critical consumers of technology, as well as see how technology can be used in ways to make changes in their own lives and in their own communities. So.
And we had a question on the right-hand side. Yeah, thank you.
Hi there. My name's Tony Whitty. I'm head teacher of a primary school of about 370 kids in Mansfield, a very deprived area of the UK. In fact, the 194th most deprived area of the UK. It's not a question, it's a point. I've been coming to Handheld now for 3 years. It's the third conference I've been to. I hear the same things every year I've been here about this digital divide. Home access is going to touch some of that, Neil, but unfortunately, parents and families that I work with are still suspicious about why home access is happening. I had a comment this week, and we will be in there. We will have lots of parents involved in this process. But one of my parents thinks it's a way for the government to find out information about themselves. That was a comment on yesterday that was sent to me by my secretary. The problem is getting in touch with these people. UK Online is a very good part of that, but you have to go to the people. I know the people I need to speak to. I have the IDACA, the Indices of Deprivation. I can target every family in my school. Free school meals is not going to be the solution for the home access, because only 28% of my families actually access free school meals. They're too proud to do it, or they don't want the free school meal for whatever reason. I don't know how we contact these people other than knock on the door and say, here we are, here's the form, fill it in. Sadly, local education authorities or local authorities now aren't being forced to participate in this program. Nottinghamshire, sadly, aren't going to be doing this, so it's left to people like myself to do something about this. It's more about action rather than talking. 3 years on, we haven't moved a great deal, to be honest. And I think next year, if I come back, we'll still be talking about it. I don't think things will have changed dramatically, sadly.
Well, I kind of agree with you. You know, that I think part of the problem is that lots of us know what to do, but we just don't know how to scale it, and we don't know how to find the money to do that. Which is partly why, as I was saying, I think it's about us making sure that we're doing the right things that we know we can do with the resources that we've got. Hence the action on social housing. You know, what we're doing with the social housing group is we're going to see if we can get every single social landlord in the country to promote digital inclusion and technology solutions close to them, to those people, and that will cost us nothing. Okay? So it's about saying, how can we just be smarter? It ought to be the time, it ought to be the tipping point for digital inclusion. You know, whatever Donald might say about Martha, you know, we have got a high-profile digital inclusion champion who is knocking on a lot of doors in the private sector as well as in the public and the third sector. and wants to amplify the work that people are doing, yourself, myself, and others, by helping us to match together and to work more closely together, and to leverage significant help from other organisations. This afternoon I'm going to a meeting with DC10 Plus, Digital Challenge, local authorities, Ofcom and Microsoft, about computer recycling. So people are now saying it's great that Microsoft ship all their computers that they have finished use with off to the third world, which is very admirable and a great thing to do, but actually shall we kind of keep them in the UK to start with and see if some of those families in schools like yours can actually get hold of those things. Other people say, well, that's a bad thing to do because that's a second-hand citizen, second-hand computer. We did a program in the East End of London where we gave families who didn't think they could afford a recycled computer and free community broadband for 6 months, and one of those mums told me she felt like she had won the lottery. Okay, so I think a recycled computer is fine. We're also talking to computer manufacturers and retailers about giving people who come through UK Online Centres a significant discount if they go on to buy a computer and broadband. And we're talking to BT and other broadband providers about having an absolute basic rate broadband cost so you can get the lowest possible cost package. So the time is right. You know, there's a lot of interest. So it's really for people like Martha and like me and other people working in the digital inclusion environment to make sure that we really take as much as we can and exploit this opportunity. So hopefully next year you won't be saying the same thing.
If I can pick up on some of the home access things, just to make sure we're dead clear on some of the things. Okay, the criteria isn't that you take up free school meals. The criteria is the same as the criteria for free school meals. So if you don't take free school meals because you're too proud or whatever, that doesn't mean you can't apply for this. You can. So let's be absolutely clear about that, because we completely recognise that issue. There's lots of people choose for all sorts of reasons not to go for free school meals. It's the threshold that's the same. And of course, if people already apply for free school meals, they'll be able to use that to show they meet the threshold. If they don't, they'll be able to apply through other means. So they'll be able to demonstrate that their entitlement through other means. It is not a requirement of any family that the kids take free school meals. You know, why would you want to eat them anyway? You know, so that's the first observation. The second observation around parental and other fear about that. You're right. And I can't imagine, though there will be differences, that in some places you won't face some of the challenges that were faced in Oldham, for example, where 90-odd% of the families took up the offer. You know? Yes, of course, people have all sorts of expectations about things outside. Of course, people have all sorts of bits of caution. But the fact, the pace at which this went, the power of the viral networking, the Asian knitting circle that supported each other in applying for this and is now a literacy circle on the back of the technology. Whole set of things like that tell me that this isn't going to be quite like that. In terms of communication with families, and this is where I start talking like an apparatchik, one of the things I put up is we are going to centralise the administration of this so as not to place burdens on schools and not to place burdens on local authorities, and we will pay the administrator of the scheme by results. So it has to put together a marketing plan to reach out to the communities, to the families, to the homes and whatever. Which is not to say that we don't want and wouldn't be delighted for schools to be supporting, wouldn't be delighted for local authorities to be supporting. Of course we would. That's great. But what we're saying is we can't make expectations on busy schools and busy local authorities that they should do that, which is why it's part of the job of the organisation we're going to contract to administer these grants, to get out there, to publicise, to promote. Okay?
Thank you. And the last word to Sam.
I was just going to really add that it was really in response to the gentleman, I don't know your name, but I'm going to come and find you afterwards, from Mansfield. It's my first time at the conference. In fact, I feel very remiss I arrived in order to do this and then go away again. But I do think the thing for me that is striking a chord more and more is we're talking about the kit, we're talking about connectivity, we're talking about the divide, we're talking about those things. I'd like to just put the people back on the agenda. One of the key things for me is, from a head teacher's perspective, from wherever you work, how we actually engage with all those people that are not in the room, whether it's about handheld, and I take David's point about how does a handheld then become something else when you plug it into something else. What are we going to do about the new breed of e-readers when they come through that are going to look more like laptops or things, because we don't know what the technology is. But how are we going to keep the workforce or voluntary sector, whoever it is, upskilled enough to know what inclusion really means in what they need to do with that technology? We have to get it in. There's another session in one of the other strands about teacher training. We have to have it embedded in a way that you can all work with those people and all those partners, because it's the people that make the difference. All the other things that Neil's talking about and everything are absolutely spot on. But Helen's teams, everybody, it's the people that make the difference. And maybe we need to go back to basics, and maybe we need the EastEnders story about the home access family. We need the whatever it is, but we need the common basic things that make people think this is about my job, this is what I do every day of my life, and it isn't called inclusion, it's just my job.
Okay, we've run out of time, unfortunately, but those of you who did have your hand up for questions, feel free to come. I'm sure the people in the panel will personally answer your question if you come up and speak to them. But I'd like to end on just giving a round of applause for people who've given us talks on, I think, good breadth and depth today. So thanks very much to the speakers. Tim's gone, but we can thank him in his absence as well. And thank you for turning up.